and a big good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you may be. It is time for another edition of State Champs HangTime Michigan. We are in the thick of things here, getting set to go to the Breslin Center. At the time we are recording this, it is Wednesday. So the time you are absorbing this, it is Thursday. And of course, some games have already been played. So some of this will be some prognosticating and see how we did in terms of figuring out where teams are going, because I'll tell you what, it's hard to call it this year. Yeah. You just don't.
Everything's turned on its ear, man.
The district's on.
The madness is in full effect,
and
that's awesome.
Yes.
I mean, that's what's exciting about the tournament.
That's right, absolutely. Scott Burnstein, TJ Kelley here. I'm Lorne Plant. Matt Mowery will be along to talk about the girls. They're in the regional stage of their tournament, so we'll talk about that later in the show. No B-Cam segment this week, but we do have a nice big long Mr. Basketball package honoring, of course, Romeo Weems, who his team is no longer in the tournament, but he was named Mr. Basketball on Monday. We did a nice feature. That'll be on State Champs TV, State Champs social media, so make sure you check that out. And we had a nice conversation with the young man. He's a good dude.
And let's give a tip of the hat to Romeo for keeping it in the mitten for all 4 years.
Yeah.
This is a guy that could have easily left.
Yes.
I'm sure there was a lot of temptation there to get out of New Haven, get out of the MAC, go play at a Mount Verity or a La Lu or a IMG. And he said, I'm sticking here. I'm sticking with my boys. I'm sticking with Coach France. I'm sticking with Ronnie Jeffrey, his running mate the last 4 years. And he had an amazing 4-year run, 2 Final Fours, a state championship. He goes down as one of the true greats that's ever played in the state of Michigan. So
kudos, no doubt.
And the other thing is, he's one of those kids where he gets it as far as like meaning so much to those communities. I'm watching New Haven and Pontiac last week, and I'm like, man, this is great to see. Two communities that that are probably shells of them or are shells of themselves. But it was great to see them rally around
one night.
For one night.
Yeah,
and it's one of those things that they'll always be able to look at those kids and say, hey, you remember that?
I think
they'll be walking around with their grandkids and somebody's going to say, you know who that is?
I think it speaks to Romeo's character, frankly, and his dedication, because as sad of a statement as this is, I think 9 times out of 10, someone of Romeo's caliber skips town and goes to a prep school.
Right, and the relationship he had with his coach, which was special.
Especially in the climate that we're in.
Yeah, which was special. Yeah. And if you want to see highlights of that game against Pontiac and New Haven, we had that on State Champs, so those highlights will live forever. So you can watch it and say, what's that?
This guy made
he was throwing it down that night. He was throwing it down.
There's effortless triple-doubles. I have yet to see a player, at least in my time covering the prep sports landscape in the last 11, 12 years that made it look so easy, stuff in the stat sheet the way Romeo did.
Okay, so here's what's going to happen now, because obviously we have a lot to say, and we also want to respect our audience, respect our editors, because it's a lot of work to have to put together these shows. So I kind of had a revelation yesterday. What we're going to do is, for many of you who are watching HangTime right now, that, of course, includes graphics and B-roll and all of this content. So, and that's what makes it challenging to do. So we're going to keep the video portion of the show to a half hour, but we are then going to come back. We're going to continue in an audio version, so you can go to iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, wherever you want to absorb your podcast, the audio podcast. We're going to keep going because we got a lot to talk about, and we're going to be able to get everything off our chest. And for you, the diehard basketball fan, if you're in your car and you want to listen to a sweet prep show for an hour, we're going to bring it to you. So that's what's happening. So quickly, I want to mention our sponsors, Lawrence Tech, the MHSAA. Remember, live video and live audio of all the state semifinals and the finals at the MHSAA website. For the video, I know there's a subscription fee, but it's also on TV. But you can get the semis, which a lot of times, if you want to hear the whole game and all of that, or watch the whole games, they've got them. So check it out. Hungry Howie's Dough Raiser. DoughRaiser.com is the best fundraiser out there for your team, for your group, for an event. Go and check it out. And also BCAM, the Basketball Coaches Association of Michigan. again, Miss Basketball will be announced on Monday, March 18th. So that is coming up. So here are the topics that we're going to have for the video side of this particular podcast. We're going to talk about the Division I quarterfinals at Callahan Hall, which, of course, we're off the hook. We're going to talk about Detroit Edison and what they did in Division III in the quarterfinals. And we have to talk about Harper Woods, Chandler Park. I know they feel that we have
the most underappreciated, undefeated team in the state.
Yes, we have not slept on them, and I can explain a little bit more about that. We did talk about them last week, but then we didn't talk about them, and I'll give you that update later. But we're going to talk about them today because they deserve it, no doubt. And I will also be at the game on Friday night for River Rouge and Chandler Park.
You think that'll be a good one?
At 7:30 at night, the final state semifinal. Should be the best.
And I was at the regional final last week and wrote a column for the state champs website that I know has gotten a lot of traction the last couple of days. So check that out.
Yeah, exactly. So, I know they haven't lost a game. So we didn't sleep on them, but again, they are, let's just say, performing extremely well and surprised
the
many.
The cream is rising.
Okay. All right. Here we go. So let's talk about the Division I quarterfinals at Callahan Hall.
8,000 people. Yeah. That place was rocking like the Dick Vitale years in the 1970s.
Yes, and unlike we've done in the past in state champs, where we always feel like we got to get those state finals highlights on, like the next day on Sunday, we said, hold up. We're doing digital shows now where we're going to do the state finals in a bundle. You can watch the games, number one, on TV. We are going to do it the next week, and we're going to do a special kind of HangTime collabo where we're going to analyze and break down the state finals, and then we'll show long form highlights of those games as well and get into it. So
looking forward to it.
It's going to be sweet. So this week's show, we're going to feature some quarterfinal action. We're going to feature some state semifinal action that normally we wouldn't do on the TV side. So you can figure out and see how some of those teams got to the finals and how some of those teams fell off, which quite frankly shocked all of us. Yeah. And again, both quarterfinals at Callahan Hall will be on the show this week. And in fact, we'll have those highlights up here on social media coming up very, very soon. But what can you say about Ypsilanti Lincoln? This team keeps rolling.
Amani Bates' legacy keeps on growing by leaps and bounds every game.
Yeah. Jalen Fisher keeps on stepping up.
We're not even through the kid's freshman year, and he's already reaching kind of mythic proportions in terms of where he's tracking and trending towards.
Right, exactly. We can't forget Jalen Fisher and what he does for that team.
Right,
and of
24,
course,
25 last night.
Check
out in a couple
the heartbeat. Yes. You know what I mean? He's the pulse of that team.
In a couple days, there's going to be a rundown about all the supporting cast at Lincoln. So check that out.
Yeah, exactly. And what they've been able to do this year has been, you got to credit the coaching staff. It's been unbelievable. And again, with having that 1-2 punch is usually what you need in order to advance, especially in Division I. And what they've been able to do, the teams they've been able to beat. We talked about it off camera that we can't remember in Division I / Class A freshman leading a team this far into the tournament.
Lawyer took Clarkson to the quarters,
but not about no quarters.
Yeah,
I'm
just saying.
Talking about Breslin.
Exactly.
And Foster did have 65 points his freshman year in the regionals.
I don't care if they're playing at the Palace. Or whatever, wherever they've been playing.
Didn't go to the Final Four.
Yeah,
Cassius Winston hit a buzzer beater at Callahan to prevent that Final Four.
There have been plenty of them going to the quarters.
And Cassius didn't get there either.
Right. Yeah. Cassius didn't get there his sophomore year.
Right.
Exactly.
Mike Talley, we were talking about Mike Talley. Only one as a sophomore.
Yep.
You know, Jalen Rose got defeated by those Cooley teams. Chris
Weber
didn't in Class C
as a sophomore. As a sophomore, Weber didn't go there as a freshman.
Right. Yeah. And I don't think Battier did either.
Battier got upset by Oak Park his freshman year.
And we're still talking about Division I, not Class B.
We're talking about the
big dogs.
Division I, if you go through that whole list, Draymond Green, the junior.
So we got one kind of transformational athlete, transcendent basketball player leaving the state, going to DePaul and Romeo Weems, Mr. Basketball, and then we have this other one coming in, just he's a blockbuster of a talent and is just living up to the hype in every way, shape, and form.
Right, and again, taking a team that it wasn't like coming into the season without Amani Bates. We were going to say, boy, Ypsilanti Lincoln's ready to make a run, right? Yeah. So, I mean, it was a good team, but, again.
And two buzzer beaters to win the regionals.
Clutch times. I mean, he's in the regional.
Hit a buzzer beating three. Hit a buzzer beating tip in to get out of the regionals.
Yeah, I was fortunate to talk to Jesse Davis, Ypsi Lincoln's head coach, last week after they wound up winning their semifinal, and I've known Coach Davis for quite a few years, and I was like, when was the first time that he gave you a wow moment, you know. And it was like probably first quarter of our first game I was coaching him in high school basketball.
Right.
You know, and it's like one of those. Michigan. Yeah. And this is one of those things where this guy
had 32.
34 or something like that in the first game.
Yeah.
He was high flying, too, right out of the gate.
And the other thing is, in talking with him, he said that our guys are used to playing in large crowds. And if you think about that,
the crowds
that's one of those things where it's irreplaceable.
Well, and the crowds that he's playing on over the summer.
Yeah, but at the same time, let's say Cass Tech plays in front of 1,500 people. Whoop-de-doo, I ain't impressed. You know, we got a dude over here bringing in 5,000 people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And there are people that are trekking to see him.
I know.
Yes. I was in line yesterday. I was goofing around a little bit on Twitter, you know, talking about Google Earth shows that there are 27 people in line, and but that was really happening at 15 minutes before tip off. You know, you go all the way up to the Callahan Hall, and you're just like, man, I get tired looking at those stairs. Yeah, but there are people sitting up there, you know, and of course they were of the younger mold and stuff like that. You know, they could conquer those stairs.
Sure.
But at the same time, that lower bowl and even that second stanza of stands. That was all full half an hour before the game started.
Jalen Fisher, though.
There were another 1,000 people walking. I went over by concessions, and I was just like, you know what, I'll go buy a $2 water somewhere else. I'm good, you know?
Jalen Fisher's the tempo setter for that team.
No doubt.
I mean, he controls pace.
Yeah.
And
he's a gamer. He goes out there, and
his emotions are high.
Yeah.
But he delivers.
He's the leader. I mean, Amani Bates is the centerpiece. But Fisher's the leader.
No doubt. No doubt about it.
I'm glad to have him move in from Memphis a couple of years ago. So
no doubt about it.
We snagged one in from.
Right. Well, the other game, of course, UD Jesuit does what they do. Roseville had a great campaign this year, but they just weren't on the floor.
It was emphatic.
Yeah. Exactly. It was definitely a crushing.
And one of Daniel Friday's future coaches was in the stands.
Mike Martin
from Brown.
We're looking ahead now to Saturday. Is it inevitable? Are we going to see Ypsi Lincoln versus UDJ on Saturday?
I'm putting inevitable.
I would be shocked if that didn't happen.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, how much shock do you need to go on throughout the season? You know, you get that cattle prod.
Howell's had a couple shockers.
Wow.
Yeah, but
they beat Oxford and they beat Saginaw.
To me, that's the most eyebrow-raising appearance. Eyebrow-raising appearance in the Final Four right now is Howell.
And led by Josh Paulo. You know, Nick Simon does a great job of coaching over at Howell. One thing about Josh Paulo, and if you look over their record over the last few years, I don't think they've lost over 5 games in the season. I don't think that
they play really hard.
I don't think that he's got a dozen. I don't think that he's got a dozen high school regular season losses. You know, and I'm not counting the 3 losses that they had in prior years in the playoffs.
They play really hard and really smart.
Yeah, hey, and Josh Paulo's got your favorite word, swag.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, he's got his Karate Kid, you know, thing on and all that stuff. You know, I mean, that's
and again,
stuff.
You know,
what about the
Okemos has 23 wins.
Yeah, Evan Thomas is pretty good.
Yeah,
you know, Noah Pruitt is pretty good.
Let me make just one more comment.
They played some good teams.
Yeah.
Let me make one more comment about Howell. This is 2 straight years the KLAA has posted teams in the Final Four.
Oh, man, they're better than the PSL.
Yeah. that's pretty good.
It is.
The KLA to get
he said it.
No buy last year and Howell this year.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll see if that's what ends up happening. It would be a shocker if we had a Howell Okemos final.
A Howell Okemos final.
I suppose that.
I'm not laughing, but I would.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that Howell's going to get a big turnout, though.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this: those semifinals. The noon and 2 o'clock games, and saying that you have 2 teams that are relatively close. Ypsi Lincoln brings fans.
Yeah.
If you didn't see the wave of blue in there yesterday, that was something to behold. Obviously, King brought a ton of fans, but yeah, I mean, you've got great matchups throughout every.
But Lincoln came into the D.
Yeah,
King King represents the D. Lincoln came into their own city.
That's what they do.
And beat them. I give Ward, Coach Ward, a lot of credit getting his team to where they did. I didn't think they. I picked them actually.
They had no superstars. Jordan Whitford is obviously a very good point guard.
Like a superstar yesterday. John Massey was.
We're gonna update our picks too and how we're doing. So we're gonna do that in the audio portion of our show. So we'll get there. I do want to say let's quickly jump over to Detroit Edison beating Flint Beecher in Division III. No one saw that coming.
Nope. No one saw Edison coming this whole year. They graduated a big chunk of that state championship team. Brian Taylor, the only one coming back, and Brian Taylor said, "Jump on my back, fellas. I'm taking us back to the promised land."
I'll tell you what happened in that game. And I talked with a coach who was at the game. So Brian Taylor goes in for a layup, winds up getting grabbed by the shoulders, winds up going down, plays a few more minutes, and then he didn't play the second and third quarter. in the fourth quarter. It's the big transfer for Marlette, and it's killing me that I can't remember his name because I'm looking.
Bryce George.
Bryce George, who had 20 points.
He was grabbing every rebound that there was to grab.
Yeah, and that's I think one of the things that glue piece, that Depsa can. Because nobody else is really going to match up.
I was talking about the whole year, not necessarily the game yesterday.
Yep. I was just filling in.
Yeah, and Brian Taylor, to me, and I've been saying this all year, most underrated player in the city of Detroit, and a guy that really doesn't get his due for the type of impact he makes. Last year, he was a more of a role player, but made a big impact as a role player. And this year, he's been a star.
Yeah, well, he's got quite a few scholarships that have added on to that.
But I'm saying no one really talks about him when you're talking about the best players in the Detroit area, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, we are now.
But in the end, how did that happen? How does Beecher lose? I mean, they gave up 76
You know what?
points.
You've got one championship coach versus another state championship coach. And I think
just watching them play this year and
dominated.
Yeah. I mean, I saw them lose to Rouge. Mm-hmm. But
no shame in losing to
Rouge, right?
Yeah, right.
And it was a battle, and it was back and forth, and it was still in December. It wasn't like that's just a big shocker and credit. Yeah,
so there's a lot of positive hardwood energy flowing through the halls of Detroit Edison with that girls team and the boys team.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's was at the game last night.
Yeah. And we'll get to some more. Hannibal Horton goes down to Erie Mason. That was shocking. That was
a little bit of a shocker.
We'll get into some more of that stuff on our audio portion when we get there. But we got to go to and talk about Harper Woods Chandler Park taking out number 1 New Haven the day after. Romeo Weems gets named Mr. Basketball. They do it at the buzzer.
And then just crushing Ferndale in the regional final.
And the question, I think, now in Division II is Chandler Park the favorite?
You know what? They're undefeated. They're definitely, I think that they're going to give River Rouge a battle. That game right there is must-see TV.
I would still say River Rouge is the favorite, personally. All due respect to
I think it's a great matchup because you've got, look at all the seniors.
They want you to say that. They all want us to say that. They say, you were not on our train earlier. We don't want you now.
Yeah, but James Scott has done a great job with Chandler Park, obviously undefeated. I think we had them sit number 6 and, for the final rankings.
Right.
And, he's got a lot of seniors. Some of them are transferred.
Great chemistry.
From Cass Tech, and those kids, and that's what it is. It's bonding. When you can get some a good team, and I joke around you'll watch old whatever, and it'll be look at square dancing. When you're watching some barely turned color TV show or something.
Andy Griffith show.
Like a little hee-haw or something.
Moving around. Yeah, it's like the electric slide, when everybody on them dance floor.
Little American bandstand, from the 50s. Little early Soul Train.
American bandstand in the 50s.
Yeah.
A lot of cohesion.
Yeah.
A lot of cohesion.
Yes.
In that lineup.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing about, I think, Chandler Park is, again, they have kind of a unique season. They beat Canton right off the bat. Mm-hmm. They beat Benton Harbor, but they lost soundly to New Haven and they lost soundly to somebody else. I put Chandler Park, but that's not who I meant. But who am I talking about here? We're talking about. I think I was talking about Edison. I think when I said that.
Yeah, because Depsa did beat Ben.
We can just edit
no, it's all right. It's all good. That's what I meant when I was talking about Edison. Is that Edison beat Canton and Benton, but lost soundly to New Haven and Chandler Park, who now we know is good. So, but the setup between Rouge and Chandler Park now is, can they do it again? Can Chandler Park do it again? Because
they definitely can. Yeah. The question is if they will. I mean, there's no question that
I just think
the opportunity is there.
I think Daniel Few in the middle is probably the X factor, just because
Chandler Park doesn't have a big post presence.
They've got some guys that are 6'6",
they got some length,
6'5", and length.
They play on the perimeter.
But Daniel Few he's like a calculated WWF wrestler.
A high motor.
Who knows when to put headlocks and all that stuff. Yeah. And he's physical.
He's going to Lake State.
I don't want to get hit in the chest 3 times by that guy. One side, I look over to the coach, and he tells me to do it again. And second time, I'll look at him. You do it.
The 3-headed monster that Chandler Park rolls out in Tylen Tate, Andre Bradford, and Derek Bryant. There aren't many teams in the whole state, no matter what division we're talking about, that can match that talent and that balance when you have.
And they all know their roles.
Right. One, Derek Bryant's the point guard. He runs the show, as TJ said last week. I was incredibly impressed by him in the regional finals. Just one of the savviest, craftiest point guards I've seen all year. Plays much bigger than his size would indicate. He's only about 5'8", 5'9", but just, the definition of a coach on the floor. And then he can score. I mean, he's not just going to control tempo. He can give you 20.
Right.
Tylen Tate had 30 in the regional finals. He had 27 last night. He had 20 in the first half of the regional finals against Ferndale. 6'6" wing, long, rangy, can shoot. He can get to the rack. He can finish. And then Andre Bradford is the shooting guard. Now he's about 6'3", 6'4". He's got length. He can take it to the rack. He can slash, and then he can also hit it from outside. Yeah. So you just have a lot of versatility, a lot of balance, a lot of intelligence, a lot of high hardwood IQs. And then James Scott's doing a great job of kind of being the cook in the kitchen, swirling that stew that's leading them to the success they're having.
And I said they beat Edison. It was 51-37. So that was sound again. We didn't really know
late in the season.
We didn't know what Edison was going to be. So it was hard to gauge where they're going to be. Beating Henry Ford in overtime in the district, 61-60. That's all of a sudden gave them the validation, okay, we can do this because again,
and then they crushed Ferndale,
89-40
They
over Ferndale.
crushed Ferndale.
Yeah,
I was at that game. I could not believe what I was seeing. They went running clock pretty much the whole second half of the third quarter into the end of the game, and just you want to talk about imposing your will and telling everyone kind of the gist of my story that's on StateChampsNetwork.com right now is that it's hard for a
Oh, make sure you're talking on the mic there, son.
It's hard for a team that's undefeated to be sneaking up on people, but that's the case with Chandler Park.
Yes, I know.
They're unbeaten, but they're still kind of surprising people. And that win in that authoritative fashion against a team that was really red hot in Ferndale, that made a statement and told you all you kind of need to know about the direction that Chandler Park was headed.
Still not leaving out Unity Christian.
Oh, and hold on. Hold on. So this is going to end the video portion of our time with Scott and TJ. We are going to continue in audio form so that if you check this out on iTunes or SoundCloud or Google Play, whatever your favorite platform is, we're going to keep talking. We're going to talk about Division 4. We're going to talk about Hudsonville Unity Christian because they need to be talked about. And
Ludington.
Yes, exactly. And Ludington, exactly. Yeah. Another one. And we're going to get into how we're doing in our picks so far this year, too. So we're going to get into all of that. So right now we're going to take a commercial break. When we come back, on the video side, we're going to talk with Matt Mowery, and we're going to update you as what's happening in the girls basketball. They are in the regionals now, and so we will get into that. And, of course, regional finals actually are done, so we're actually getting into quarters next week, but we're obviously filming this before the quarters. So we're going to talk about that next. Again, we'll come back with these guys on the audio side, so stick with us here on HangTime.
Fundraising should be fresh, flavorful, and simple. We have the perfect solution at Hungry Howie's. Dough Raiser. Your team or school can sell paper pizza certificates that can be redeemed for one medium pizza at participating locations.
We've been doing this fundraiser for about 4 years, and it's the easiest and best and most profitable fundraiser they have in Michigan.
Go to doughraiser.com to learn more and sign up. Your next fundraiser comes with flavored crust. Welcome to Hungry Howie's Dough Raiser.
Coaching basketball is a rewarding and challenging pursuit, but you don't have to do it alone. The Basketball Coaches Association of Michigan are here to support you.
BCAM is the largest coaches association in the country with nearly 6,000 members representing college, high school, and middle school ranks. Members have access to drills, clinics, job opportunities, and it's the only way to vote for our annual awards, including Mr. and Miss Basketball.
Join today by visiting bcam.org because better coaching always matters.
So, I got my start in officiating when a friend told me I should try it. At first I just did basketball, and I got hooked. Before long, I added baseball, softball, football, and volleyball. I really enjoy giving back to the game, working with kids, and working with my local association to recruit and train new officials. I would like to say to anybody that officiating is a great way to help kids and stay connected to the game. We always need new officials. There's help wanted, just listen.
right, welcome back to State Champs HangTime Michigan. Matt Mowery in the house, the managing digital editor here on StateChampsNetwork.com. You can all read his stuff. He's everywhere. And when it comes to girls basketball, he is on this beat like no one in the state, and I can say that unequivocally. What you've done this season has been really great, and great for State Champs, and great for the girls, because we've given them a lot of coverage. He's done a lot of traveling, and really feels like he's got a pulse on where these teams are at. I don't think we see nearly as many upsets as we've seen boys.
Right.
When it comes to girls, things typically seem to play out, but then every once in a while you have upsets, and you've got big matchups coming up here. Now, the interesting thing is, we're recording this hours before the regional finals get started. So most of this is going to be a prognosticating kind of thing. But that's all right. We're talking in general. And should there be some major upsets, then so be it. And we'll talk more about it next week. Yep. So we're going to go for about 8 minutes here on the video side of things, and then we will take it to the audio side of things. So if you want to hear more about what we're talking about in girls basketball, we'll get there. So here on the video side, we'll start off, and he set me up with some nice topics here to get into, and the big one is the quote unquote challenge for Detroit Edison, a team that lived in Class C, now Division III, up to Division II, hoping that this was going to be a more difficult time. We're going to have more competitive games, but I don't think that's the way this thing is played out.
So far, it has not. And this is nothing against the intentions of Edison, because I think their decision-making process was spot on, that they wanted a new horizon basically to chase after, and I think they got that part of it. New teams that they're playing, ones that they hadn't faced in the postseason before. What they haven't really gotten is the challenge so far. I think the district semifinal against a very good Harper Woods Chandler Park team that gave them a battle for the better part of a half before Edison separated to make it a 30-point game.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's the closest they've gotten to a challenge. The other scores so far, 99-23, 78-16, 88.
They couldn't get 100. They couldn't get one more. Yeah.
That's probably because some of the call, especially when you're that deep, you can just throw out your freshman unit.
Yeah.
and tonight's game is against a centerline team that was 15-9.
And you say tonight, they're listening to this Thursday,
yes,
so last night's game.
Last night, Wednesday night's regional finals.
Yeah.
But they were fifth in the MAC Gold, and it's part of the problem too is in Division II in Southeast Michigan. There are a couple of teams. I think a lot of the strength is a little more outstate in this division too.
Right.
So this part of the bracket that they're going through is also not as strong.
Right.
And the other part is, when we were looking at it at the beginning of the season, we all said, okay, well then they're going to meet Country Day in the quarters.
Right.
Country Day is not here, which is just a weird feeling.
Yeah. When was the last time they lost in the districts?
21 years ago, I think, was the last time they did not win a district title.
Amazing.
So it's been a run, and they've gone from the districts to almost every one of those years winning a regional title, and so the expectation, considering what their resume looked like over the last 2 decades, you kind of figured that, okay, well, yes, they're going to run into Country Day. Not the case.
Yeah.
It could be, they might get Pontiac, Notre Dame Prep, or Goodrich. And Goodrich is a team that is probably better than their record, but they're definitely not the Goodrich team of 5 or 6 years ago when they were consistently running into Country Day in the quarters and regional finals, when they had a couple missed basketball candidates. That was a different level of Goodrich team. This is a very good one, and they could probably give Edison a little bit of a run. In the semifinals, Edison might get a Chelsea team that's got 1 loss, or a Carleton Airport team that's got 1 loss, Jackson Northwest team that was in the finals last year against Country Day, or a Hazlitt team that knocked off Williamston. But again, you're still looking at some teams that are going to be severe underdogs in the game. And then in the finals, they could get Freeland or Central Montcalm, or Muskegon Oak Ridge with a Sophia Wired who's headed to Toledo, or a Hamilton team that's undefeated. So there are still challenges to come. But I just looking at the first portion of their trip through the playoffs so far, having said all of that, competitively, they might have been better served to stay in D3.
Isn't that funny?
And face, again, some of the same teams they faced again. Now, mind you, in talking to some of those teams, I know Steve Eklund at Pewamo Westphalia joked that he was sending Christmas cards now to Monique for making the decision for going up. But competitively, I think they might have faced some better, or if they had opted all the way up into D1, it might have been a better challenge for them.
Well, that would have shook everything up. If they would have been in Division 1. That would have been pretty crazy. That's an odd thing. That Division 2 is kind of the least competitive in terms of who they would go up against. But as you've said, this has been kind of an odd year.
Right, and also I think it changed when we went from divisions to classes, because there were a couple of contenders.
Explain how that changed. It wasn't just in name alone.
Classes is when you take all of the schools and you divide it by 4. Divisions is when you take all of the schools that have the team in that particular sport. So since there were a lot of teams or a lot of schools, especially smaller ones, that didn't necessarily have the sport. So what it did is it changed. So there were some Class B teams, like, to give you an example, Michigan Center made it to the semis last year in Class B, but they were a Division 3 team this year. So just because they, ended up below that threshold. So that would have been another contender. If we were still back in the Class B system, Michigan Center would have been one of those teams that was right up there. And they had a pretty colossal battle in districts with Grass Lake, who was right on their heels and actually won their conference. But then they got knocked off by Springport in the regional semis on Monday. So Michigan Center was one of those teams that we kind of had in the top 4 or 5 in D3 all season long, and at one point we're in the Super 10 and up to about 6 or 7 across the state. So I think there would have been some teams like that probably were those real small Class B schools that could have been additional challengers. But yeah, and a lot of times what you also end up with in Class B is you're either the biggest school in your conference, or you're not really getting challenged by the C schools, or you're the smallest in an AB conference, and so you're getting, the snot kicked out of you sometimes by the A schools. So Class B has always kind of been a betwixt in between for some schools, but and there's really not anything you can change about that. But it does hurt that this isn't a traditional year as far as some of those powers, really.
Well, and when we talk girls basketball, a lot of cases we're talking about Sacred Heart, and we're talking about Our Lady of the Lakes,
same old suspects,
and we're talking about Country Day, and even Marion now, who was upset in the regional semis. If Grosse Pointe North, a good team, very good team, great matchup there as they went to take on the main event on State Champs this week is the Grosse Pointe North Southfield A&T regional final. It's almost a shame it's in a regional final for that game, but that's the way it works out. So you could check that out later this week. But again, some of those traditional teams, for whatever reason, aren't there right now.
Yeah, and if I was looking back over the last decade and considering what teams that I've covered the most in the playoffs, it's probably those 4. Marion, Mount Pleasant Sacred Heart, Waterford Our Lady of the Lakes, Country Day. I mean, just because those are the teams that were consistently making runs all the way to the finals. And it's just weird to not see, especially in Class D, where Waterford, Our Lady of the Lakes, and Sacred Heart have been in the finals or semis almost every year in the last decade. It just looks odd. And Marion's had their ups and downs over the last decade or so, but in the last 6 years at least, they've been a contender for more often than not. And to see all of them out, especially Country Day, I mean, that's always just been so much of a fixture. 21 straight district titles is just mind-boggling. And, of course, they have the most finals appearances of any girls' basketball program in state history. So for it to just be over in a blink like that, I mean, I was thinking maybe that last, gasp would come in, maybe regionals or maybe if they ended up in quarterfinals, certainly against Edison. But
when I saw them play Grosse Pointe North, which was their second to last regular season game, they were with them and playing well. And again, they had some good athletes that were matched up, and I was like, all right, well, I think this is a Country Day team that's coming together. Obviously, Frank's final season, being Frank Orlando, the head coach, and maybe they've got a regional run in them, and who knows, maybe they get to the quarters or somehow find a way to get to the semis. I'm not sure where what did we say the Edison would have wound up? That would have been a quarterfinal matchup. So that could have been their swan song, but still would have been a quarterfinal matchup. But hey, credit the teams that are there. St. Ignace and Portland St. Patrick are still there.
Yeah, those are two that will be still in that. Portland St. Patrick had Adrian Lenawee Christian in a regional final Wednesday night, so that was going to be
right.
That's a
so
tough
we don't know how that one has turned out yet.
Yeah,
we could say it's over or not, that's a tough game.
Yeah, and St. Ignace is another one of those borderline schools. They were in C last year and didn't make a very deep run, and now in D they're one of the the powers that be, and they're going to be one of the favorites. It'll either be Lenawee Christian getting a second in a row, I think, or St. Ignace getting a sixth title, putting them right there on the second tier behind Country Day.
Let's say whether it is Portland St. Patrick or Lenawee, where would they end up be playing St. Ignace? What would that end up being?
That'd be the final.
It'd be the state final. Okay, that's right. Okay.
Yep.
So all right. So So that will be that will probably be St. Ignace's biggest hurdle.
Absolutely.
One of those two teams.
Yeah, well, and St. Ignace gets Kingston along the way, which Kingston's only two losses are to Division I or Class A schools, and Utica Eisenhower by, I believe, 3, and Oxford, I believe, by 1. Now, Utica Eisenhower and Oxford were not teams that made a deep run in Division I, so we're not talking, a Saginaw Heritage level team or a Midland Dow level team. But those are, when you're a D4 team and you have, smaller bodies and smaller, size of your team, to be that close with two Division I teams and have those be your only two losses, that's impressive. Having said that, I think, still this is probably going to end up being a collision course between those two.
Yeah. We are going to end our video portion of our podcast, and then we're going to continue this online, audio only. So we're going to take a time out here in a minute. Well, actually, on the video side, we're going to end the show. Otherwise, we're going to take a time out audio wise. But just some things if you want to check out the audio version, continued version. We're going to talk about a little bit about GP North knocking off Marion and their chances moving forward. I want to mention it does about Wayne Memorial and does Ann Arbor Pioneer maybe have a shot? I'm sure we would find out. Dow and Heritage getting together again.
7th straight postseason.
Yeah. So there's lots of stuff we want to continue to talk about. So you can check that out on your favorite audio platform, iTunes or SoundCloud or Google Play, whatever it is that you get your podcast from in an audio form. That is where you will hear the continuation of this. Otherwise, on the video side, we're going to end the show now. Thank you so much for watching another edition of State Champs HangTime Michigan.